What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Fringe. Today's the big day. In fact, yesterday, Alberta Prosperity Project's Jeff Rath spoke out about um, the new bill, not bill, but the new budget implementing what Albertans are standing to save when they vote for independence. I've said on live stream, I said yesterday on yesterday's video, I believe this is the silver bullet when it comes to Alberta having legs to push the idea of independence moving forward. What do I mean by that? The amount of money that's given in personal income tax, corporate income tax, GST, excise taxes, etc. What we put out versus what we get back from the federal government is astronomical in terms of showing what Alberta can do to balance itself, to look after itself, to actually expand upon its programs and essentially quell any arguments people would have about leaving the federal government. In fact, some channels spoke out yesterday saying the biggest threat to independence is going to be loyalty to Canada. I think what it's going to have to do with is nostalgia for a Canada that doesn't exist anymore. The thing is, now we have an argument when it comes down to the dollars and the money value and the potential future for Alberta that is inarguable, to the same kind of iteration that I've always given, that if I were to leave $500 on the ground on fire and walk away, would you put it out and pick it up? Chances are yes. There's a few things happening that we got to focus on today, because as it's Independence Day in the United States, happy 4th of July to all of our American viewers. Please enjoy your celebrations today. Enjoy them responsibly. Hopefully, we'll still see a good handful of our American viewers in on our live stream tonight, starting at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central. We love our American viewers, but it's also an Independence Day in sorts for Alberta as Bill 54 is moving through. What is Bill 54? Well, it's Danielle Smith's bill that is reducing the required amount of signatures to hold for a referendum, making them more plausible, making them more attainable. What you're seeing here is the Carney Broadcasting Corporation, or the CBC. It's funny, and I always bring this up whenever we cover their articles, but isn't it funny that our taxes, speaking of wasted tax dollars, go to this platform, yet they still charge people to put ads on their platform, and they still shove them in your face, even though taxpayers pay for this corporation in the hundreds of millions of dollars. But they're already twisting what's happening with Bill 54. And I wanted to highlight that before we get into this new budgetary plan that's been put forward by Alberta Prosperity Project. And stay with me, because there's great news for anybody who wants to read this over for themselves. Beginning Friday, Premier Danielle Smith's United Conservative government is officially lowering the required threshold for citizens to initiate a province-wide referendum, including on separation. Let's call it what it is: independence. Mitch Silvestri, CEO of Alberta Prosperity Project, a nonprofit group of Alberta promoting independence, says he plans to apply to Elections Alberta the same day to start a petition under the new rules. Now, don't get too excited, because there's a definite doorstop that's in the way of that. I'm going to get into that. The group aims to gather 177,000 signatures within 120 days to put the question on a ballot for voters. Do you agree the province of Alberta shall become a sovereign country and cease to be a province of Canada? I would not be surprised, if that referendum was held right now, that we could possibly even win it, Silvestri told the Canadian press. He said many Albertans are skeptical Prime Minister Mark Carney will be able to restore trust after federal policies for years have siphoned Alberta's resource riches elsewhere. What's funny about that statement is that I've often said the fact that we have to wait until 2026 for a referendum vote is actually beneficial. Because as the EU has dismissed Mark Carney after he ran to them and gave the finger to the United States, well, now it looks like Mark Carney's out on his own. He's probably going to have to do some sucking up to the U.S. at this point. I would tell Donald Trump, tell Mark Carney to pound sand. It only promotes independence further for Alberta. It only is going to fuel talk of separation or independence further in this province, the more they get to screw up. So let's just let it simmer, folks, before we rush into this. The biggest issue we face on a hurdle And Corey Morgan, good friend of the channel over at the Western Standard, has pointed out that Thomas Lakazuk, former Progressive Conservative Deputy Premier in Alberta, is working to thwart the separatist effort. Well, surprise, surprise, his petition was done before Bill 54 came into effect, meaning he has to require a much vaster amount of signatures, much more vast. I shouldn't say vaster. Vaster isn't an actual word. He has to get more signatures than necessary, certainly more than the 177,000 required by Alberta Prosperity Project. But he says now, out of politics, he's arguing that Alberta's rules do not allow for two competing petitions on the same issues. There's only one petition at a time, so mine precludes theirs, he said, which he thinks is a win. All this is a 90-day stall for Alberta Prosperity to run their petition. Now, keep in mind that when Alberta Prosperity Project runs their petition, they have 120 days to gather 177,000 signatures. But over on their website, they've been collecting people's information to reach out as soon as they're able to start taking said signatures, meaning they'll probably only need about a week or two, and they're going to have those numbers, so it'll be finished very quickly once they're able to get boots running on the ground. So if anything, Lakazuk is just coming in as interference to essentially stall, show that, well, there's no ground for him to get all these signatures, and we're just going to move forward in the end anyways. But what's funny is the CBC now saying, since Lakazuk applied before the new rules took effect, he'll need to collect 294,000 signatures, which means they're saying he only needs to get 100,000 signatures roughly more than the Alberta Prosperity Project. That's actually fake news, CBC, because if we head over to Bridge City News, they covered when the former deputy premier launched his petition, and these are the actual numbers. Alberta's chief electoral officer received and approved a citizen initiative petition of application from former progressive conservative deputy premier Thomas Lakazuk before Bill 54 takes effect on Friday. Lakazuk is trying to prove Albertans would reach the 600,000 signature requirements and vote on staying in Canada. It's 600,000, CBC, not 294,000. Try again. This is why I love pointing out these idiots and their articles. They just try to make everybody to make everybody think, oh, it's nothing but a small fringe minority. It's never going to happen, right? What's really funny about all of this, and even Tom Lakazuk's petition, is that if people were to answer the opposite of his question, it would essentially promote independence in Alberta, and the premier would have to act anyways. But let's be honest, he's not going to get 600,000 signatures. It's a pipe dream, so this is nothing more than a stall. But my question for these guys, and especially the CBC, anybody who's talking down about independence, saying it'll never happen, it's a nothing burger, you've got Naheed Nenshi and everybody else talking about it, saying it's never going to happen, then just let us vote. If you're so sure, just let it go through and let us vote, and then you can point the fingers and say, what a time vampire, what a waste for everybody. Now, it does state down here that Lakazuk has 30 days to appoint a chief financial officer for his campaign, after which he'll be able to start gathering signatures. So he'll start within the next 30 days, plus another 120 to garner his signatures. So if anything, ladies and gentlemen, if we're not able to start getting our signatures, it's just a stall, and we'll get them done. Speaking of Alberta Prosperity Project, I don't want to keep this video too long. You can head over to their page, albertaprosperityproject.com. I'll put a link in the video description. Not only can you submit your pledge to vote for an independent Alberta, meaning they will let you know as soon as they can start garnering signatures. And again, I think based on their records, if they can get everybody together and verified quickly, they could have those signatures within a week or two of launching that 120-day campaign. And keep in mind, I will also point out, and I've had them on the show talking about it, they do not sell off your information. They are not giving your information to anybody else. This is well-kept information and data that is being stored within their hands only. So they aren't giving this information to another bidder or somebody who wants to steal your information. It's strictly to get a hold of people when it comes time for signatures. So please don't hesitate to sign up and give them your email to reach out. But now, the value of freedom, their document based on how much money Albertans are actually going to save, is downloadable right below on their site. You can download the PDF, share it with family and friends, and go over it as well. Now, I'm going to head over to it right now and show you guys this is a 44-page document. I've had my time to peruse it. I'm going to go over some of the highlights, just some of the quick highlights, so that people who maybe don't have a computer to go download the document or look at what's being discussed in this document can understand at least the direction that it's headed. We'll go through it further on other videos, but I kind of wanted to give the cliff notes for anybody who was eager to understand just what does this bill highlight. You have your effective summaries or your executive summary here talking about the dollar figures, where money goes out versus what could come in, what happens if Alberta grows aggressively, again, predicting the future. One of the things to mention about this is that they're taking budgets from the federal and provincial from other past years and working with those numbers to determine exactly what Alberta would stand to gain based on laws, based on regulations, based on how independence would essentially work once you go to the table in good faith to begin negotiations. And I want to go through some of those here. Because what they highlight is about a 5-year plan to getting Albertans essentially to paying zero taxes. Next to none, if any. They show down here in the billions of dollars. And this should just give you an idea of what we're putting out versus what we'd get back. In 2021, personal income tax from Alberta was $30 billion. Corporate income tax was between $9 and $10 billion. GST was between $8.2 billion, or was $8.2 billion. Sorry, excise taxes was 2.4 to 2.5. EI and CPP were 12.6 to 13.4. Total contribution, $62 to $64 billion. I won't go through each of them. We'll just go to totals for the next year. For 2022, contribution total was $66 to $71 billion. 2023, $70 to $74. 2024, $73 to $77. Now, for anybody saying, well, yeah, but that's just $77 billion. How do you run a country on $77 billion? This is per year. If you add this up, this is just shy in 4 years of being just under $400 billion. Can anybody remember what Mark Carney's deficit for what his spending was going to be over his next 4-year tenure? They were talking of an estimate of $300 billion, meaning Alberta would stand to make more than Mark Carney wants to spend in his entire 4-year run for the entire country of Canada, excluding any stupid ploys to funnel more money out to other countries or any other commitments he wants to make. The budget that he submitted, or not budget, but the proposal, we haven't heard a budget yet, but the proposal was essentially, according to Canadian Taxpayers Federation, roughly a $300 billion deficit. So over 4 years, Alberta would actually make more than Carney expects to spend in the next 4 years. They highlight the framework here and the key observations. Alberta contributed an estimated $68 to $75 billion annually to federal revenues, driven by its strong oil and gas sector and high per capita income. After accounting for federal transfers back, which is $22 to $26 billion annually, Alberta's over-contribution to Canada was approximately $44 to $47 billion per year, totaling $185 billion over 4 years. Now, that's what we're not getting. That's what we're giving out. It shows here all the revenue components. Fiscal implementations of an independent Alberta. If Alberta were independent, it could retain the full $68 to $75 billion in annual federal tax contributions rather than losing $44 to $47 billion net to Ottawa. This revenue would include personal income tax, again, corporate income tax, GST, excise taxes, EI, and Canada Pension Plan. Here's the economic benefits. Retaining the full fiscal tax and payments of $68 to $75 billion annually would transform Alberta's fiscal landscape. Infrastructure investment. Funds could address aging infrastructure, such as roads, pipelines, public transit, enhancing economic efficiency. Public services like increased revenue could improve healthcare, education, social programs, reducing wait times, and enhancing quality of life. In terms of diversification, we could invest in technology, renewables. Other sectors could reduce reliance on oil and gas, mitigating voluntary risks. Lowering personal and corporate taxes could attract businesses and residents, boosting economic growth. Alberta's personal debt of $78.4 billion in 2023 could be addressed more rapidly, freeing up future budgets. They also go into the cost for replacing federal services in an independent Alberta. And one thing to highlight that I didn't mention earlier is they said that this all works within the frameworks of all of our current treaties, everything to do with First Nations. So it doesn't overstep any boundaries. This is again why you have constitutional lawyers looking at all of this. Everything's done within the confines of the law and what would be required for an independent Alberta. But they show all the programs, all the areas where we spend with the federal government on the province and what it would cost us. And again, it's 44 pages, folks. Go and download the document. You can have a look at it yourselves. Canada Pension Plan transfer to an Alberta pension plan, how it would work, what we would save, what goes out versus what comes back, what we could potentially give out to people. RCMP funding and policing, analysis of specific federal services and Alberta's payments. Again, it breaks it all down so that you have a better understanding. Overview of an integrated independent Alberta financial landscape. Balanced budget requirements, debt limits, transparency and reporting over what's being spent, spending oversight, taxation principles, resource revenue management. Again, I keep saying it, but it's all laid out here, folks. Essentially, what the bill breaks down to is that within 5 years, Alberta would be so enriched with the money it's saving from giving it to Mark Carney, from giving it to the federal government, for giving it to Quebec in transfer payments. Every penny that goes out would make this province an unstoppable machine. So anybody ever arguing at this point, well, I just don't know if it's worth it for Alberta to leave, ask people how they would feel keeping all the money they pay in current taxes. How much better they would feel if their grandchildren could have jobs. They've estimated that also going independent would create roughly 300 to 400,000 jobs in the province on top of what's already existent within, I think it's 10 to 15 years. If that was possible, our next generations could have a stronger future, a better outlook on life. They could afford homes. They could afford to tuck a little away and invest. They could afford basically what the boomer generation was able to do, that the current generation can't on a grander scale. I can definitely tell you that I often sat around in my 20s while my father said, look, it's important to get RSPs. It's important to get GICs. It's important to maybe throw some money into a stock portfolio and put them in some safe, low yield accounts so that you can start building up your net worth at a young age. And of course, as a young kid, I didn't listen. But when I look at what the current generation has at their feet, they call it the ninja generation because they don't have the ability to have anything underneath their belts. They essentially go through the world waiting to inherit everything that, well, people of my generation are able to leave behind. The problem right now is that we're too busy paying the government everything we have to leave anything of value to them. And if Mark Carney succeeds with his universal basic income bill, where he looks to tax everyone's equity, there will be nothing left for future generations. You'll live in modular housing, and as Mark Carney and his friends at the WEF say, you'll own nothing, but you definitely won't be happy. Let me know down below what you think, folks. Are you going to head over to Alberta Prosperity Project and download said document? Are you looking forward to the breakdown? If you're unable to download it, when we talk about it in future videos, let me know what you think of Alberta prosperity moving forward, if you think it's going to be possible. What do you think about Thomas Lakazuk and his 600,000 signatures that CBC gaffed on? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. If it's your first time here, I hope this video has earned your subscription. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on your bell for all notifications. As independence heats up in this province, folks, the bad actors, the bad apples, they're all going to come out of the woodwork. Censorship's going to be high. There's going to be hedge funds. There's going to be governments. There's going to be all kinds of people who don't want this to happen. You want to be here to get all your news. Join me live tonight on the channel for our weekly live streaming show, Friday Night Fringe, where I sit down with the beautiful Mrs. Fringe and we go over everything that happened this week in Canadian politics, everything we know coming up in the week ahead that we're aware of, as well as Q&A within the greatest YouTube community on the platform. I always look forward to chatting with you guys outside of making these videos. I most importantly look forward to chatting with you tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central here on the channel. Happy Independence Day again to our American viewers. I hope you guys have a wonderful day and enjoy yourselves. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll catch you on the next one.